Hello there, this is Out Motorsports. My name is Jake, and this is a 2020 Ford F-250 Platinum. And these trucks came out for the 2017 model year and got a facelift for the 2020 model year. And the one that is with me today has two notable options that are new for this model year. It's got the Tremor off-road package, and it's got Ford's new 7.3 liter gasoline-powered Godzilla V8 engine. So let's talk about what this truck is, what's new with the Tremor package and the 7.3, and then we'll see how it tows, because as with any truck we look at that has a hitch, we're gonna pull something with it. Now, as you can see, this truck is huge. This is a big boy. This is the Tremor package, which is the off-road package that Ford has released for 2020 that is taking square aim at Ram and their Power Wagon 2500. For whatever reason, these companies have decided there's a market for heavy-duty, off-road capable trucks, and Ford with the Tremor has taken a different tack than what they did with the Ford Raptor. The Raptor is more of a high-speed, jump dunes at 100 miles an hour sort of truck. Maybe don't try that for the sake of warranty, but anyway, the Tremor is more of a low-speed, rock-crawling sort of setup here, and there's a lot to talk about. But first, let's talk about the F-250 in general. So, like I said, this is the F-250. This is the smallest of Ford's Super Duty lineup, which is basically everything above the F-150. Ford and other brands will call these heavy-duty trucks. In reality, they're considered more medium-duty chassis, given how much they can haul and pull. The Super Duty lineup starts with this F-250, and in pickup truck form with a full cab and bed goes from 250 to 450, and that basically denotes payload and towing ability. They're all the same truck. Above 450, you can move into a chassis cab configuration, which is just the front part of the cab. You have no bed, and that allows upfitters to do kind of whatever they want, and those will be the F-550 and 650. Those are all marketed as the Super Duty truck and platform. Now with this F-250, this is an F-250 Platinum. This is almost king of the hill for the Super Duty lineup. You cannot get these high trim levels above the F-450 because while they're all sort of work trucks, the 550 and 650 are what you're gonna use for like dump trucks and U-Hauls and things like that, and they're not looking to be super luxurious places to spend a lot of time. But the 250 here is a Platinum. This is fairly fully loaded. Like I said, it's got the new 7.3 liter Godzilla gasoline V8, and it's got the Tremor off-road package. You can, of course, have an F-250 in a lower spec starting at XL. Those will come with vinyl floors even, but rolling all the way up here to the Platinum with these couple of options and everything else on this truck, the MSRP of this one is about $77,450. Let's talk about the 7.3 liter Godzilla V8. This is a new engine for the 2020 model year, and Ford is using this engine to replace their old 6.8 liter single overhead cam V10. If you ever drove a 26-foot Ford-powered U-Haul truck, you drove one with a 6.8 V10. If you've driven a Class C motorhome with a Ford engine that wasn't a V8, it probably had that single overhead cam 6.8 V10. So the V10 at this point is just an old, tired engine. Ford decided it was time to put it out to pasture and replace it. But what they were looking to do is have an engine that was very simple, very low maintenance, very low cost of operation, because that's what the V10 was. The V10 was not the most powerful thing in the lineup. It was not the torquiest. It was not anything super exciting, and it also didn't sound that great. It sounded kind of like a garbage disposal with a bunch of rocks thrown into it, but it would run forever and ever and ever, and it would pull and tow and haul whatever you were looking for. And yes, it got 8 miles a gallon the whole time doing so. It got 8 miles a gallon with the tailwind turned off, but it worked. And it worked because the formula was simple. So Ford went back. This is a completely clean sheet design with this 7.3, and with this 7.3 liter V8, Ford chose that displacement, I think for a reason. That's going back to the trucks of the late 90s, early 2000s that had that 7.3 liter Power Stroke turbocharged diesel engine that is so loved. It made not a lot of power, a ton of torque, and it was about as reliable as gravity. This was probably a pretty deliberate choice here, but like I said, this is gasoline powered, not diesel. Ford does still offer a diesel in these trucks. It's a 6.7 liter Power Stroke, and it's been around for quite some time. With this 7.3 being a gas motor that's designed to replace that V10, It is going to be higher power, higher torque than the base V8 that's offered in these trucks, but it's not going to be the torque monster that is the 6.7 liter Power Stroke diesel. That Power Stroke diesel puts out over 1,000 foot-pounds of torque, which is great, especially if you're pulling a big trailer. It also costs a lot of money. It adds a substantial amount to the price of any of the Ford Super Duties. If you're going to be towing a ton of weight for a ton of miles for a ton of years, financially it may make sense for you. If you're not, or you're just not looking to spend as much money, this 7.3 adds a couple $1,000s to the base price of any F-250. It's going to run on regular gasoline. It's going to have a lot lower cost of ownership over the duration of the vehicle. All right, now I've got my phone out here because I want to talk about facts and figures for these Super Duty trucks. I want to make sure I get them right. Ford also offers in every Super Duty a smaller 6.2 liter V8. That's been around for a while. It's kind of coexisted with the Power Stroke diesel and in the past the V10. And the 6.2 liter makes 385 horsepower and 430 pound-feet of torque. And then you've got that 6.7 liter V8 Power Stroke diesel, which makes 475 horsepower and, like I said, 1,050 pound-feet of torque. That is huge. Now with the 7.3, it's making 430 horsepower, which is a little less than that Power Stroke, and it's only making 475 pound-feet of torque, which is still a lot. It's just not as much as that Power Stroke. Of course, this is naturally aspirated and it's gasoline powered. It's just not going to be the same as that Power Stroke diesel. The 7.3 replaces the 6.8 liter Triton V10, which is a lovely engine that's very old at this point, and at its best day made 362 horsepower and 460 pound-feet of torque. So you're up a pretty substantial amount of horsepower here, and you're up about 15 pound-feet from the latest and greatest of the V10s. The older ones were less power, less torque. Now with this 7.3 liter V8, you will only find it mated to a 10-speed automatic. That's the corporate 10R80 that Ford is using in all their trucks now, and it's been beefed up for Super Duty use. So you'll feel it shifting a little firmer, behaves a little different compared to what you would find in, say, an F-150, but it's the same basic design. Now this 7.3 liter Godzilla V8 is going to make power and torque at a higher rev range than you would get from a diesel. This 7.3 liter Godzilla V8 is going to make peak horsepower, which is 430 at 5,500 RPM. You do have to wind it out to make all that power. And the peak torque of 475 pound-feet is going to be had at 4,000 RPM. So like I said, this is not a turbo diesel. You're not going to have everything peak power, peak torque being made at 1,200 RPM and have it just kind of grumble along down the road. You do have to wind it out, but it's a big block V8. It's going to sound pretty good doing it. And you've got a lot of gears to help you get moving and stay moving once you're up at highway speeds. Like I said, this Godzilla 7.3 is a pushrod engine. This is a very simple design that is meant for durability, low operating cost, low maintenance, and Ford did some different things here with the design of the 7.3 to make it that way. It's an iron block engine, which is going to be stronger than an aluminum block. It's better if you happen to overheat it. It's also just more durable. It's port injection, which is an older fuel injection technique. It's not direct injected. Everything's going to direct injection, but if you've owned a direct injection vehicle, you know that you have to clean the valves. Everything takes more maintenance. Companies are only just now figuring out ways to have dual injection that keeps things cleaner. Ford said, we're not going to do it. This is a port injected motor. Now the main bearings in this engine are cross-bolted and they use 4 bolts. This is for maximum strength and durability. Again, Ford added a lot of extra hardware here to make sure that this engine will hold up to the test of time, and probably some abuse from people who are sharing vehicles where these engines are installed. And then Ford added a few other pieces of hardware that help with cooling and performance if you're towing or hauling a lot. There's a variable displacement oil pump, so the engine gets as much oil as is needed based on how heavy of a load you're putting on it. That's really nice compared to a traditional oil pump that just pushes the same amount of oil around all the time. The other thing is there are cooling jets for the pistons that help manage the engine temperature, again, under a heavy load. So you're working the engine harder when you've got a bunch of weight hooked up to the back of it or stuff thrown in the bed, or maybe hooked up to a U-Haul as the case may be. And Ford added some extra cooling for the internals of the engine, which will help with that durability. All right, so talking about what this Tremor package is. Like I said, this truck has the Tremor package. This is an off-road package that is meant more for low-speed rock crawling than high-speed dune jumping. The Tremor package can be had on most trims of the F-250 and F-350. This is a single rear-wheel F-250. You must get a single rear-wheel truck to get the Tremor package. You can have this package with the 7.3 liter Godzilla V8 like I have here, or you can get it with that Power Stroke V8 turbo diesel if you're really looking for all that extra torque. Now the Tremor package does add a decent amount of off-road hardware. Ford starts by trimming the front air dam underneath the bumper of the truck. That's usually fairly low to help with fuel economy. In this case, they trim it so you're gonna have a better approach angle up there. You've got twin tube upgraded shock absorbers that will help with off-road driving. Ford claims they help with on-road driving at low speeds as well. We'll talk about that in a minute. You do have these unique matte black 18-inch wheels, and you get Goodyear all-terrain tires. Now this is a 35-inch tire. It's huge. Usually to get a 35-inch tire on most off-road vehicles, you have to lift them or trim the fenders or whatever. Ford just stuck these on and they fit. Now there is a lift kit on this truck as well. It's lifted by about 2 inches in the front, about 1 inch in the rear. That will help with ground clearance and approach and departure angles, breakover, things like that. It makes this truck tremendously tall. I live in an apartment building with underground parking. You can fit most half-ton trucks under there pretty easily. I think if this truck was not a Tremor and it was a little bit lower, it would fit as well. But this truck is so tall. I went to pull it in. I got about 3 feet into the garage and backed it out, and I found other parking arrangements for the week that I had it. So just keep that in mind. I was doing some browsing on some web forums, found a Tremor specific forum. There are people building new garage buildings to park their Tremors in because they are so tall. And these trucks are long too. That's not a Tremor thing, but this F-250 is almost 2 feet longer than my Ram 1500, which is a similar size to Ford's F-150 and every other half-ton truck. So keep that in mind if you're looking to buy one of these and garage park it. It's a big, big vehicle. This is not the 8-foot bed, this is the shorter 6 3/4 foot bed. The final option that Ford adds to the Tremor package here is a locking rear differential and a limited slip front differential. You can get that locking rear diff even if you don't get the Tremor package, but you get the limited slip front, and that's with a 4.3 to 1 axle ratio on both axles. So that's what the Tremor package does. I did have a chance to get it a little off-road, a little muddy. Unfortunately on the East Coast, a lot of our off-road trails are fairly tight. And like I said, this is a big truck. I was able to find some new construction and go play around while no one was there. With enough room to play, this truck is pretty capable, it's pretty fun, but it's huge, it weighs a lot. If you're gonna take it in the sand, you're gonna have to be really careful because it's so heavy. If you're gonna take it down some trails, it's pretty big. You gotta be really careful unless you wanna add some surprise pinstripes to this nice red paint. The all-terrains, the differentials do work well to keep this thing moving in dirt and mud, up some steep inclines. I took it up an incline that was marked at something like 18 or 20 degrees, and it drove itself right up like no big deal. Ride quality is gonna suffer with these tires and the suspension. Unloaded, every 250 and up truck is going to have a worse ride than a half-ton truck like an F-150. That's just what you have as a byproduct of having so much payload and so much tow capability. You have to have really stiff springs, and unloaded ride quality is pretty bad. The Tremor package makes it worse. You've got these tires that are noisy and big blocky, they're not highway tires. The highway ride, hitting a bunch of expansion joints, even with 4 people in this truck, is pretty poor. You have to really, really want the off-road capabilities to really enjoy this Tremor package, I think. Now it's worth mentioning towing and payload. While we're back here, you can see we've got my enclosed trailer hooked up. We're gonna talk about how this thing tows in just a minute. The towing and payload of a Tremor-equipped F-250 is not compromised compared to having a truck without the Tremor package. That's a really big deal because you've got different wheels and tires, different shocks, etc. And Ford was able to do it and not compromise anything. This truck can pull with a traditional tag-mounted trailer up to 15,000 pounds. You can have about 3,300 pounds of payload in the bed, and you can have more payload if you get an F-350. This truck also has the gooseneck prep package. You can tow a little bit more than 15,000 pounds if you've got the gooseneck trailer versus a tag trailer. But mine is a tag. Mine is also aluminum construction, fairly lightweight. We're only putting about 6,500 pounds behind this thing. But the whole point is to see how this truck is to tow with, given this Godzilla V8, compared to the tried and true 6.7 Power Stroke. So let's get behind the wheel and see how it tows. All right, so towing with the 2020 Ford F-250 Platinum with 7.3 Godzilla up front and Tremor off-road package on all 4 corners and underneath of me. Like I said, this truck in particular is built to show off both of these new packages. You don't have to get them together. You can get the Tremor package with the Power Stroke diesel. You can get the 7.3 without Tremor. So we're talking about both. The truck has both, and it's interesting to try to evaluate how this thing tows while also dealing with the tremorness of it all. But the big deal with towing is the Godzilla V8. So like I said, 7.3 liters, and it's naturally aspirated. It's not a turbo because this is meant to be low maintenance, low cost of ownership. The other thing to mention, like I said, is that 10-speed automatic. Unloaded, I don't love it. It skips gears at low speeds. It goes 1, 3, 5, and then counts up 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 from there, unless you're really on the throttle. Like I said, this is a Revy engine. It needs to be revved out. The max power is at 5,500 RPM, max torque's at 4K, and the transmission, when the truck is unloaded, just wants to shift at 1,200 RPM over and over and over for the sake of fuel economy. And fuel economy in this truck is laughable no matter what because it weighs 1,000,000 pounds. Loaded up, I like this transmission more because it's willing to let the engine rev out between gear changes a little bit and thus make more of its power and torque. All right, so we've got a green light here. We'll go ahead and give it the beans. This is full throttle. There's 50. There's 60. So, like I said, not gonna win a drag race necessarily, but it's certainly not slow. It's about 435 horsepower, 475 pound-feet. It's more than adequate, and the transmission with a load on it works pretty well and will let you wind it out, make all that power and torque because it does make it higher up in the revs. I think there's a very specific use case for someone who wants a Tremor package on a heavy duty, medium duty, whatever you want to call it, pickup truck that's bigger than a half-ton. I'm not that girl. I think most people aren't. A lot of people that are buying these Super Duties are looking to tow trailers with them. A lot of us in the motorsport community are looking to pull a heavy trailer and do it really, really well. So I think the Tremor package is gonna be to your detriment if you're really looking for towing above everything else, because it's gonna make the ride worse, the stability will be worse compared to a higher load range highway tire, and you know, you're spending more money to have something that would be worse objectively at pulling a trailer than the trucks without it. The Tremor package is almost $4,000. I think if you think it looks cool and you have a lot of property that you want to drive around on, if you're on, you know, a farm where it's often muddy and there's big hills you have to climb and, you know, you're always taking it off-road, then sure, this is a really useful package. If you've got trails where the truck will fit, it's a useful package. I think for a lot of people who are buying these though, they're gonna buy the Tremor to flex on people who don't have the Tremor package, and they're not gonna use anything about the Tremor package very often, and they're gonna be driving a truck that's not as fun on the highway, not as great unloaded, and not the best tool for their needs. Not a bad tool, but not the best option, and you know, you're spending more money where you could perhaps not. All right, and that's it for this review of the 2020 Ford F-250 Platinum with both the 7.3 liter Godzilla V8 and the Tremor off-road package. Thank you so much for coming along today. As always, please like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. A big welcome to all of you who might have found your way over here from Jalopnik. We really appreciate the support there. And as always, give us a follow on Facebook and Instagram. There will be a full written review of this truck and how it tows on outmotorsports.com. That will be linked in the description below. Until next time, as always, please drive safe and be well. We'll see you again soon.